She stepped onto the mat like she didn't belong. Simple black joggers, a faded grey hoodie, hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun, no makeup, no entourage, no brand-name gear slung over her shoulder. Just a woman in her late 30s walking into the Apex Jiu-Jitsu Academy, the most prestigious martial arts school in Boston, like it was any other Tuesday. Except it wasn't. It took less than a minute for the room to size her up. Whispers fluttered through the air like dust kicked up on an old floor. Phones subtly angled for photos. Some students smirked. Others didn't bother hiding their confusion. "What's she doing here?" one guy muttered. "Lost on the way to yoga," another joked. Then came the voice that cut through the murmur scum, confident but razor-sharp. "Let's be clear," said Blake Carter, the Academy's head instructor. "This isn't a self-esteem seminar. This is real training, real sweat, real bruises." He was tall, built like a prizefighter, with a black belt cinched around his waist, and the kind of swagger only defeat can't touch. A former MMA regional champ turned jiu-jitsu coach, Blake had cultivated a reputation as both the technician and a tyrant, revered by some, feared by others, and completely convinced of his own legend. He stepped forward, eyes locked on the new arrival. "You here for a tour, ma'am?" he asked, condescending emphasis on the last word. "Number, I'm here to train." Some students chuckled. Blake didn't. Not yet. "Name?" "Rachel Wynn." He rolled the name around in his mouth like it tasted wrong. "Well, Miss Wynn, we run things a little different around here. You don't just show up and jump into class. You observe first. You learn what this is about." "I already did. Online. I'd like to join today's fundamentals session." Blake's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Look, we get women here all the time. But this isn't cardio kickboxing or spin class. If you want to burn calories, I can recommend a few places down the block." Rachel didn't blink. "I've already paid for 3 months. I'm ready." A hush fell over the room. No one spoke to Blake like that, especially not whoever she was. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then he shrugged. "You're cool, but don't say I didn't warn you." Class began with warm-ups. Rachel moved through each drill with quiet precision mount transitions, shrimping, forward rolls. Her form was unassuming, nothing flashy, nothing dramatic. But sharp-eyed students noticed the small things. The way she distributed her weight, her breathing control, how her posture never broke. And that's what irritated Blake the most. He wasn't used to being challenged by silence. Midway through class, he called everyone to the center mat. "Let's demo a guard pass," he said. "Rachel, step forward." The students exchanged glances. Some looked eager, some looked uncomfortable. No one volunteered. She stepped out without hesitation. Blake gestured for her to lay on her back. "This is a common pass for when someone turtles up or plays closed guard. Watch closely." Then, without warning, he swept her legs violently and drove his shoulder into her chest, slamming her against the mat. Gasps rippled across the room. He stood over her, lips curling into a smirk. "This is why proper training matters," he said loudly. "No amount of online videos can save you from poor fundamentals." Laughter followed from the corner of the room, from the back row, from those too scared to ever be in her place. Rachel didn't move for a moment. She lay there, staring at the ceiling. Then she exhaled. Slowly, she sat up, reached for the edge of her hoodie, pulled it off in one clean motion. And there it was, barely visible beneath her athletic taupe military dog tag glinting under the fluorescent lights. She didn't look angry or humiliated, just calm. Calm in the way that unnerved people used to having control. She stood up, adjusted her sleeve, and bowed slightly. "Thank you for the demonstration, coach," she said, her voice even. Blake said nothing. The class continued, but something had shifted. Eyes that once mocked now watched carefully. Whispers changed direction. The woman who didn't belong, had taken a hit most, would walk away from and came back standing straighter. Later, as the others packed up their gear, Rachel stayed behind, alone on the mat, quietly practicing her breakfalls. Blake passed her on the way to the locker room. "Might want to stick to watching next time," he said over his shoulder. Rachel didn't answer. She didn't need to. Not yet. Over the next few weeks, Rachel showed up to Apex Jiu-Jitsu exactly 3 times a week. Never late, never loud. She changed in the corner of the locker room without a word, tied her white belt with quiet precision, and took her place at the edge of the mat like a student ready to learn. Always the same grey hoodie. Always the same calm. No one knew what to make of her. She didn't try to make friends. She didn't laugh at the locker room jokes or linger after class. She didn't post selfies with sweaty gloves or talk about tournaments. She just trained with a focus that unsettled even the most seasoned students. Blake ignored her as much as he could, but even he noticed something was off. This wasn't a hobbyist trying to lose 10 pounds. This was someone who moved like she had muscle memory for war. She never boasted, never corrected others. But when drills were assigned, her partners quickly realized she never needed anything explained twice. Her grips were firm, her balance unshakable. And when she sparred, there was something uncanny about how she absorbed pressure, how she let others think they were controlling the match, only to reverse it with a small, deliberate movement. "She's got scary control," one purple belt muttered under his breath during water break. "She lets you think you're winning." "Yeah," his partner replied, like she's been trained not to react unless absolutely necessary. Some started whispering theories. Maybe she used to compete. Maybe military. Or maybe she's just one of those people who watches too much YouTube. Blake didn't like it, especially the way some of the advanced students had started watching Rachel with curiosity, even respect. So he pushed harder. He singled her out in class, correcting her posture in ways that strained her shoulder, forcing her into drills with overly aggressive partners, skipping her during sparring rotations, making her demonstrate techniques she hadn't been taught yet, only to critique her in front of the class. "This is what happens when you skip steps," he'd say loudly. "Technique is earned, not Googled." Rachel never flinched. She nodded, adjusted, moved on. But Blake wasn't done. One night, after an especially brutal session where she'd been paired with a 200-pound blue belt who treated the drill like an MMA match, she found her gym bag had been moved to a corner of the locker room near the trash bins. No one said anything, but no one needed to. When she returned the next class, the screensaver on the Academy's television displayed a slideshow of photos from recent sessions. One of them paused on a still frame of her being slammed to the mat during Blake's demonstration weeks before. Someone had added text across the bottom, "Try yoga." The room laughed. Blake smirked. No one said it was his doing, but everyone knew. Rachel stayed silent. Later that evening, as she was wiping down mats in silence, tasked with cleaning after being told she wasn't sweating enough to count, someone stood quietly at the edge of the mat. He was older, broad-shouldered, carried himself with a calm, solid presence that immediately drew the eye. Salt and pepper beard, civilian clothes, but unmistakably military in posture. "You don't belong here," he said. Rachel looked up, unoffended. "Meaning?" He stepped onto the mat. "I saw you in the VA clinic. Physical therapy wing. You were working on that double amputee vet's shoulder rotation. The way you guided his movement? That's not something you learn from a book." Rachel stood slowly, her eyes narrowing. "Name's James Wilson, Master Sergeant, retired. I taught combatives at Camp Lejeune, spent 20 years in the Corps." She nodded once. Recognition passed between them like a secret handshake. "You were infantry?" he asked. "Combat instructor, Marine Corps, 8 years. His eyebrows lifted. "That explains the eyes." He gestured toward her sparring scars. "And the knuckles." Then he leaned closer. "Why are you letting them treat you like this?" Rachel exhaled, slow and even. "Because sometimes you need to see what people are really like when they think you're nothing." James chuckled. "Still playing chess in a room full of checkers. I'm not here for them. I'm here for me." He nodded. "There's a group that trains at the Dorchester Community Center, Tuesday and Thursday nights. Real martial artists. No egos. Come by." That week, she did. There, in a faded gym under flickering lights and peeling paint, Rachel found what she hadn't realized she was missing: respect. The kind that doesn't come from belts or plaques or Instagram clips. The kind earned through quiet excellence and mutual struggle. James watched her train and didn't hold back. "You've been holding back," he said after one session. I can't afford to draw attention." He looked at her for a long moment. "Then you better decide when you will." The Boston Open Jiu-Jitsu Invitational wasn't just any tournament. It was the kind of event where reputations were made, belts were earned, lost, and egos were either crushed or immortalized. Apex always showed up with a full team, led by none other than Blake Carter himself, eager to reinforce the image of dominance he worked so hard to build. Rachel Wynn had submitted her registration quietly, weeks in advance. Women's blue belt division. Her entry barely raised an eyebrow, just another white belt, with delusions of grandeur. Blake scoffed when he saw her name on the roster. "Cancel it," he said coldly. "She's not ready. She'll embarrass us." But it was too late. The registration had been processed, the fee paid, and the bracket locked. Under tournament rules, once confirmed, a competitor could not be removed without cause. Rachel had one foot in the ring, whether he liked it or not. He made sure everyone else knew it too. "She's doing this to prove a point," he sneered during practice. "Let her. Sometimes the best lesson is public failure." The morning of the tournament, Rachel arrived before dawn. No team shirt, no hype squad, just a plain black duffel bag, a calm expression, and a pair of worn dog tags hanging over her chest. She found a corner near the back of the venue and began stretching, her breath steady, eyes focused. The Apex team congregated near the center, laughing, prepping, warming up. Rachel was not invited. Claire Donovan, one of Blake's favorite purple belts, sauntered over just long enough to deliver a smirk. "Coach said you should stay out of the team photo. We're going for a certain aesthetic." Rachel nodded once. "Of course." She returned to her stretching. The women's blue belt division was scheduled for mid-afternoon. As the early matches played out, Rachel observed each competitor quietly. She noted grips, habits, weak sides. Strategy wasn't a game. To her it was instinct. At 12:13 p.m., everything changed. A voice boomed over the loudspeaker. "Attention, black belt division. Due to a last-minute medical withdrawal, we have a vacant spot. As per tournament protocol, the next eligible alternate will be advanced. Will Rachel Wynn please report to the registration table?" A wave of confusion rippled through the room. Rachel Wynn? In the black belt division? Blake shot to his feet, face flushed with disbelief. "That's a mistake," he barked, storming over to the official's desk. "She's not a black belt. She's a white belt at my academy. I personally evaluate my students. She's not qualified." The tournament director, a calm, sharp-eyed woman in her 60s, didn't flinch. "According to our verified paperwork," she said, turning her screen toward him, "Miss Wynn submitted credentials from a certified black belt sponsor, one Master Sergeant James Wilson, U.S. Marine Corps, retired, instructor-level combatives certification." Blake's jaw slackened. Wait, what credentials? Who the hell? But Rachel was already walking toward the mat, pulling on her competition gi. She tied her belt in silence, never once breaking eye contact with Blake. James Wilson appeared behind her, arms folded across his chest. "Staff Sergeant Wynn," he said quietly. "Ready?" She nodded. Blake was spiraling. "This is a setup. She never demonstrated black belt skills in my academy. She tricked us." Wilson raised an eyebrow. "Or maybe you just never bothered to look past her hoodie." The tournament director cleared her throat. "Mr. Carter, your protests are noted, but unless you're forfeiting, you're up next. You're her first opponent." Blake froze. "What?" The crowd leaned in. "Due to the bracket adjustment," she repeated, "you'll be facing Miss Wynn in round 1. It was poetic justice, a twist so perfect it felt scripted, but this was no fiction. And Blake Carter was trapped. The news spread like wildfire. By the time they stepped onto the mat, the audience had doubled. Phones were up. Coaches whispered nervously. Some cheered. Some just watched in stunned silence. Rachel bowed. Blake hesitated, then bowed back. The referee blew the whistle. Blake lunged forward, aggressively classic Blake. Heavy on pressure, fast on grips, designed to overwhelm. But Rachel didn't flinch. She sidestepped, redirected, and caught his sleeve mid-motion. The next 3 seconds were a blur. A clean sweep, a perfect grip transition, a lightning-fast move into S-mount. The next 11 seconds, an armbar so crisp it could have been used in instructional footage. Tap, tap, tap. 14 seconds. The entire match was over in 14 seconds. The crowd gasped. One voice rang out, incredulous. 14! Blake rolled away, face red, breathing hard. He didn't shake her hand. He didn't bow. He just stormed off the mat, humiliated. Rachel stood in the center, serene. She bowed to the referee, bowed to the judges, then turned toward the crowd. Phones flashed. Students from Apex looked on, stunned, speechless. Claire, the same woman who mocked her that morning, stared as if seeing a ghost. James Wilson approached her, voice low. Flawless. Clean kill. Rachel's voice cracked slightly. My dad always said, focus on the mission, not the noise. James nodded. He'd be proud. And just like that, the myth of Rachel Wynn, the quiet woman in the hoodie, began to rise. Rachel didn't win the tournament. Her semi-final match was against a seasoned black belt with international titles and a 10-year competitive career. It was closer than anyone expected, but Rachel tapped out to a choke in the final 30 seconds. She walked off the mat smiling, not because she had lost, but because she had shown exactly what she came to show. That she belonged? By the time she returned to her corner, the whispers had changed. That's the woman who submitted Blake Carter in 14 seconds. Combat instructor, Marine Corps, 8 years. Why was she even a white belt at Apex? That last question echoed louder than the rest. Clips of the match flooded martial arts forums by nightfall. The words 14 seconds became a viral hashtag. It was replayed again and again, the takedown, the precision, the calm. It wasn't rage or revenge. It was mastery. And it sparked a fire. Because if someone like Rachel could be dismissed, mocked, and written off by a top-tier academy, who else had they silenced? Over the next few days, emails began arriving at Apex's inbox. Former students, parents, women who had quit after one class, men who'd been humiliated for asking questions. One message read, "Now I understand why I stopped going. It wasn't the training, it was the culture." Maxwell Denton, the business-savvy owner of Apex, had a crisis on his hands. Membership inquiries plummeted. Sponsors pulled out of upcoming events. A local news outlet ran a story titled, "Veteran Humiliated at Martial Arts Academy Submits Head Coach in 14 Seconds." And Blake Carter? He tried to fight it, claimed Rachel had misrepresented her credentials, called the match a fluke, said it was a setup. But the governing body reviewed the footage, and then they started reviewing Blake. Turns out, Rachel wasn't the only student he'd tried to humiliate out of a spotlight. A former student, now a police officer, came forward. A mother who had brought her teenage daughter to train and left after one class. A junior instructor who had quietly quit after Blake joked that women didn't belong in full-contact grappling. Patterns emerged. Maxwell had no choice. Blake Carter was suspended. Not with a press conference, not with a big announcement, just gone. His name removed from the schedule. His profile quietly deleted from the website. His career, like his ego, left in silence. When Rachel returned to Apex one last time to pick up her gear, Maxwell intercepted her at the door. "Rachel," he began, all smiles now, "what happened?" "Well, it's unfortunate, but eye-opening. I think we could really use someone like you. In fact, I'd like to offer you the position of head instructor, total freedom to design the women's program, and your background, it's gold, from a marketing standpoint." Rachel looked at him for a long moment, then smiled, not with anger, but with quiet resolve. "No, thank you," she said simply. "But I do appreciate the clarity." And she walked out. In the months that followed, Rachel partnered with the Veterans Wellness Center to launch a new initiative, Resilience Through Movement. It combined martial arts principles with trauma-informed physical therapy. Veterans signed up in droves, especially women, especially those who, like Rachel, had once been told to stay in their lane. The program grew fast. Within 6 months, it operated in 3 Boston neighborhoods. Master Sergeant James Wilson joined as co-instructor, gruff but effective. Together, they created something that didn't just teach armbars, it restored dignity. One of her students, a female Marine who had survived an IED blast, said after class one night, "You don't just teach defense, You teach us how to own our space again." Rachel kept the old dog tags visible during every session. She never mentioned the 14-second match unless asked, and even then, she always redirected. It's not about the move. It's about preparation, focus, and knowing who you are when no one else does. One afternoon, as class ended and students rolled up their mats, a familiar figure appeared at the edge of the training space. Claire Donovan. She looked hesitant, out of place, no Apex G, just a sweatshirt and jeans. "I came to apologize," Claire said softly, "for what I said, what I didn't say, what I watched happen." Rachel nodded. "You're here now. I want to help if you'll let me." Rachel paused. "If you do, understand this isn't Apex. This isn't about belts or being the best in the room. It's about rebuilding what Warrior people have broken. You ready for that?" Claire swallowed hard, then nodded. "Yes." That day, the woman who once laughed from the sidelines started training beside the woman she used to mock. 6 months to the day after the Boston Open, Rachel made a quiet trip back to her hometown in Pennsylvania. She visited the cemetery where her father, a fellow Marine, had been buried years before. She knelt by his grave, placed a stone, then tucked a folded photo beneath the flowers. It was a picture of her student smiling, sweaty, confident. A new generation of warriors, healing on their terms. She touched the dog tags around her neck. "You were right, Dad. It was never about proving them wrong. It was always about showing up for the ones who never got the chance. Some people mistake silence for weakness, but the strongest voices don't scream. They lead. Greatness doesn't wear designer belts. It walks in quietly, wipes down the mat, and leaves the world changed. The mission is what matters, not the noise.